I'm not too pink for Halloween. I mean, not that you can't have a pink Halloween moment. I just think that should be private for. Oh, hey! Hi, dolls. It's me, Wilma Fingerdoo, with the Fingerdoo review of RuPaul's Drag Race UK Season 4, Episode 3. And before we get started, I want to thank this week's Tipperdoo from Vermont, Moonshine Shory. Oh, autumn in Vermont, how exciting. Enjoy an apple cider and a warm fire for me, Moonshine, seriously. And, of course, I also have to thank my Tipperdoo boyfriend, Vito, for being my Tipperdoo boyfriend. I love you, Vito, seriously. I'd also like to welcome two new princesses to the Fingerdoo family on Patreon, Ron and Tom. Welcome, boys. I hope to see you at one of our live chats, seriously. Oh, did I mention we do 2 live chats a month here at the Fingerdoo Review on Patreon? Whether you're a diva, a princess like Ron and Tom, or a queen, all chatters are welcome. If you'd like to join the Fingerdoo family on Patreon, the link for that is down below, along with the link for leaving a Tipperdoo. Shut your face. Now, Jorge, drink me! Oh, look at this. I'm going to say iced tea and not dirty sink water. Iced tea. Well done. Toronto iced tea, though, right? Oh. T-E. Thank you, Jorge. All right, so let's get to it. It was a very emotional workroom this week. At least it was for John Briss Blonde, poor thing. Being that close to elimination was almost too much for her. Thankfully, she got a lot of support from the other queens. Damn right she got support. JB just sent home the queen who had Rue's favorite entrance look ever. I'm surprised they didn't make John Briss their queen. The power. Sminty saw Starlet as a more expensive version of herself and therefore big competition, and was quite happy to see her out of the running. Everyone agreed. Danny tried to stir the pot by asking Sminty if, as a look queen, she was worried. Well, of course Sminty wasn't. She's 23. She's barely aware there are other people in the room. Of course, Baby was devoed not to have been on the winning team for the girl group challenge, especially since it was the one she really wanted to win, bless her. Still, it's not like she sucked. She was just surrounded by suckers. And I never mean that in a sexy way. And then everyone made fun of Sminty and her old maiden dress comment. I would just like to take a moment to thank Fillers_0 from YouTube, who informed me that Sminty's old maiden dress line was a reference to New York on Celebrity UK Big Brother. Apparently, those who get it, just get it. Fillers thinks it was iconic. And now I do too. Thanks, Fillers! Seriously. The next day in the workroom, 7 of the 10 remaining queens were sporting Repeater badges. Episode 3, and 60% of the queens are on top. Of course, that's mostly down to the Queens of the Bone Age winning last week's girl group challenge. Although, not all of Triple Threat went without. Black Peppa had a badge from her first week win. Do you remember that? So long ago now. Of course, Baby was still bitter over being badgeless. Thankfully, Rue's video message changed the subject. It was all about little balls and letting them have it. Why were the balls little and why did they need to have it? Pixie immediately thought bingo. Sminty kept to her brand and thought making over old maidens. Seriously, if I wasn't at risk of breaking my wrist, I'd give her such a slap. Great. Thankfully, Rue arrived and she'd brought a mini challenge with her. Oh, I'm so happy. I hate it when she comes empty-handed. Rue would be awarding the NAFTAs. Now, this is an obvious play on Britain's BAFTA awards, but NAF, in British slang, or at least some British slang, means tatty or unfashionable, which confused me because that award was beautiful. Does anyone think there isn't chocolate under there? The queens had 15 minutes to get red carpet ready. 15 minutes? Sweet Pete's. And then Rue presented the awards. Up first, Beast in Show, honoring the actress who's displayed the most star quality. That went to Black Peppa. Boy, was she not surprised to get it. Good for you, Black Peppa. Seriously, you take that award. Up next, Best Background Actress in a Non-Speaking Role, which went to Coppertop, much to her own chagrin, bless. Best Scene-Stealing, Attention-Grabbing Camera Hog went to Danny Beard, who proved she deserved it by having the most fabulous acceptance speech. She was so overcome, she could barely speak. This is how funny it was. Rue barely made a sound, she was laughing so hard. Not one of her fake loud ones. And yes, fake loud ones was the name of my Fringe play. Best Actress Resting on Pretty went to Baby, who admitted that she wasn't funny. Mostly because she was pretty. That's what I got from it anyway. Lastly was the Best Hot Mess Award, which went to Sminty Drop. Best Hot Mess? Who's the other one? And then clutching their Lindor Rue. Seriously, don't they look like drag queen versions of a Lindor bunny? Just me? Anyway, Rue told the queens that this week's Maxi challenge was a sewing challenge. That's right, I said sewing! They would be creating high fashion looks for a hot night of bingo, which is a bit of an oxymoron if you ask me, but it's not my show. I don't know about you, but the minute I heard this week's category, all I saw was a bunch of bingo ball looks bouncing down that catwalk. And I was scared. But no, far from it. First off, the queens would be working in pairs, creating complementary looks. Secondly, Rue had little Jacob haul out 5 huge boxes with the word bingo across them and a hopper. Yes, that little bingo ball spinner is called a hopper. In that hopper were 10 balls with each of the queens' names on them. One by one, little Jacob cranked that hopper and displayed his balls. The first pair were LaPhil and the hot mess herself, Sminty Drop. LaPhil was thrilled. Baby and Dakota were the next pair of little Jacob's balls. Speaking of little Jacob's balls, Cheddar and Copper were the next pair, much to Cheddar's genuine delight. And the pair little Jacob whipped out after that were Danny and Pixie. Pixie couldn't have been happier. From the sounds of it, I think she was afraid she would get stuck with a skinny queen. Then the most cathartic moment happened. Little Jacob pulled John Burr's blonde's ball, but it was clearly more than a mouthful, so little Jacob turned to Rue for help with the pronunciation. Rue didn't even bother. She just flat out said that it was a terrible name and to just call her JB or J Blonde. And yet, the name Sminty is sweeping the nation. Seriously, first Heidi in Closet, now John Burr's blonde? Don't get me wrong, I think it's a terrible name too, but it's not my name, so who cares? Still, from the look on John Burr's face, I think she may have peed a little. Dry or not, JB was teamed with Black Pepper. Well, who else would she be teamed with? They were the last 2 queens left. I'm so serious. Then, because she won the Hot Mess Award, Sminty got to assign the bingo boxes, each of which were filled with an assortment of new and vintage fabrics. I interpreted that to mean that some of the fabrics were stretchy and some were not. Sminty seemed to feel that this honor gave her an edge, but because she didn't really know what was in the boxes, it was a crapshoot all around. Sminty took the match the box to the Queen's Ensemble route, which got the blue one for herself and LaPhil because, well, she was wearing blue. She gave O to Baby and Dakota because Baby was wearing black. She gave B to Cheddar and Copper because Cheddar was wearing gold jewelry. Pixie seemed to have a touch of the Michelle Visage because she just didn't want the end box because it was green. Well, she needn't have worried because Sminty gave her and Danny the Purple G. And I don't mean that in the sexy way because Purple G was my drag queen name in high school. That left the dreaded end for JB and Peppa. I'm thinking Peppa doesn't like green either because she was far from thrilled. I'm so serious. Right away, the queens got to work. Cheddar asked Copper if she sewed. She was thrilled that she did because Cheddar does not. Well, beyond the odd hand job here and there. Not only was Dakota determined to prove herself to the judges in the looks department, but she was also promising Baby that she was going to get a badge this week. Did Dakota have a bowl of oatmeal for breakfast? Because she was definitely feeling her oats, let me tell you what. And then, good, bad, or ugly, the queens opened their boxes. From Sminty's reaction, you'd have thought there were dead bodies and burlap in that blue box. Pixie and Danny weren't keen on their choices either. Were these queens forgetting that they were going to bingo? Thankfully, Rue dropped in to see how the queens were doing. John Burrs and Peppa were first. Their sketches were good, but I immediately started to worry when Peppa mentioned weaving. That sounded fussy and time-consuming, which are death for a sewing challenge, I'm just saying. Cheddar and Copper were basically told they were old when Rue said they collectively had the most experience in the room. Rue also asked Copper about winning Best Background Actress. Copper assured Rue that the other queens were misjudging her. I don't think Rue believed her. Dakota tried desperately to convince Rue that they wouldn't be seeing subtle from her this week, but it didn't look like Rue was going to hold her breath. After Danny apologized for her simple drawing, she told Rue that she and Pixie were taking her advice by not reinventing the wheel and keeping their designs simple. But it sounded like Rue was worried it might be too simple. Finally, the hot mess and LaFille presented Rue with their plans, but I feel like they ended up having a counseling session with Rue instead. Why else would Sminty be in tears after? Poor Coppertop. Right after Rue frigged off, she asked the room who voted her Best Background Actress. Why, Copper? Who cares? They had to pick someone. At the very least, take the hint. You knew this would happen when you landed in the bottom week 1. Stop whinging and win a challenge. Seriously, prove them wrong for the love of crispy chicken. Another queen who was making me crazy was Peppa. Her need to weave was a mystery to me. She and John Bruce spent ages measuring out strips of fabric. With a pen! Who else did that make crazy? Just me? Why John Bruce didn't just tell Peppa to leave it, because it would take too long, is anyone's guess. Who cares how much work you put into it if you can't get it finished? This is right up there with Sum Ting Wong's navy jacket. Seriously. And then, just like that, it was Elimination Day. All the queens had work left to do. Well, except for Copper and Cheddar, who seemed to only have to pick out their shoes. Danny couldn't bear to see Copper wear white boots with that gold outfit and offered to let her borrow a pair of boots from her. Personally, I think Danny was trying to make up for calling Copper a background actress. Just me? But it was clear that the team with the most left to do was the basket weavers, Peppa and John Burrs. Both their outfits were still in pieces. Seriously. As the rest of the queens started their makeup, Pixie and Danny talked about their boyfriends. Danny got emotional talking about his beautiful boyfriend, Joe, of 10 years, and how important he is to Danny and her career. Pixie talked about how she and Tia Coffee were dating for 5 years until, as Pixie put it, mistakes she'd made saw them breaking up a year ago. Clearly, there were still feelings, emotions, and regrets for Pixie. Ain't love grand. Over on the other side of the room, Cheddar talked about the difficulties being a drag queen can put on a relationship, but she's reached a point in her life where, well, she stopped caring what other people think. I hear you, Cheddar. It's called not being 23. Speaking of being 23, Sminty asked LaFille about her love life. I was fascinated to hear how difficult it was for her to attract gay men. The same, of course, could not be said for the straight boys. And seriously, who needs that drama? Am I right? And while all that was going on, John Burrs and Peppa were still weaving away. Idiots. On the main stage, Rue looked beautiful in blue, Michelle was cheeky in cheetah, while Alan Carr looked gorgeous in green. Wasn't I just wondering where he was last week? And joining the judges this week, the almost too gorgeous to look at, but you can't look away because she's too stunning, supermodel Leomi Anderson. Seriously, that's too much beauty on one person. Category is Bingo She Betta Don't. First off, can I just say this was a bingo-themed challenge in name only. None of these runway looks had anything to do with bingo in any way. Not the game, not the dog. It was a letdown for me is all I'm saying. That said, LaFille and the hot mess were first, and I have to say for all the drama and steaming hot mess that went on, I was impressed with their look. If I had to pick one, it would be LaFille's. Fingerdoo for Team Blue. Wait, did Sminty make gloves? John Burrs and Pep were next. Although John Burrs had the better outfit, neither of them were really blowing my skirt up. Mind you, Peppa could have used a good skirt blowing because hers was slowly making its way down to the floor, poor thing. Fingerdoo for Team Green. There were a lot of things about Pixie and Danny's runway I liked. First off, Danny was wearing less white makeup. Secondly, their looks were complemented without being the exact same, and they both looked like they were going to a bingo hall in a very posh neighborhood. Fingerdoo for Team Purple. Dakota and Baby's runway looks took my breath away. They looked so different, but their fabrics kept them cohesive. The fact that they both had almost the exact same hairstyle was a nice touch. Seriously, Fingerdoo for Team Black. Last but not least was Cheddar and Copper. I love their looks from the shoulders up, but I think Alan Carr said it best when he compared Cheddar's look to the one you see online and Copper's to the one you actually get delivered. I know Copper was all about her lined cape, but if she'd spent more time on her outfit, it would have looked better. Seriously, are those raw edges around the leg openings on her onesie? Also, I'm sorry that she didn't borrow black boots from Danny. Half a finger don't for Team Gold. It's all Copper's fault, seriously. Then it was time for judgment. Pixie and Danny were safe, so they fragged off. The judges loved Sminty and LaPhil's look, especially LaPhil's detail work. Dakota and Baby were another obvious fave of the judges, particularly how different they looked and yet how much they looked alike. I said. Of course, the same can't be said for Johnbers and Peppa. The color of their looks washed Johnbers out, and Peppa's dress got sadder and sadder the longer she walked in it. It's never a good critique. As for Cheddar and Copper, the judges were split. Clearly, Cheddar was their fave. For the most part, they felt that Copper's look fell short and even suggested that Copper was responsible for that in part by not helping with the details. Slap in the face. Back in the Untucked Lounge, it was clear that Peppa and Copper were going to be in the bottom. And while Peppa was ready to prove the judges wrong, Copper wasn't taking any of this well, poor thing. Bless her cotton socks. Back on the main stage, Rue announced that this week's winners were Baby and Dakota Schiffer, and no one was more thrilled than Baby, except maybe Dakota, because she had promised. She had promised that Baby would get one. Finally, Baby did have her Rue Peters badge. Mind you, Dakota is now the first queen of season 4 to have 2 badges. I'm just saying. As for who was in the bottom, Johnbury squeaked by, and it was Peppa and Copper who had to lip sync for their lives. The song they had to lip sync to was This Is Real by Jax Jones and Ella Henderson. I have to say, I was impressed by Copper. I thought she kept up with Peppa through most of this lip sync, and then, somewhere in the middle, Peppa took us to church, and even ending in a synchronized split really couldn't have saved poor Copper. So, when the music died, it was Black Peppa who shantaed, and sadly, it was Ginger Coppertop who sashayed away. Although, I have to say, for a minute there, I thought for sure that Rue was going to have a double shantay. But I was wrong. So, what about you? Were you happy with the outcome? Did the right queens win? Did the right queens land in the bottom? Who do you think is in trouble for next week? All we can do is tune into RuPaul's Drag Race UK next week to see how it all plays out. And when you're done, you come on back and you see me so you and I can compare notes. Now, until then, please give this video a thumbs up if you liked it, subscribe to my channel if you haven't, and check out the links in my description box for ways that you can help support this channel. Until next time, miss me! Seriously, Jorge. Johnbers is the only queen in the room that doesn't have a badge. Poor thing. Maybe Rue will give her one for having a bad name. But seriously, that's kind of presumptuous. You know, I was thinking about this. Did I like Heidi and Closet's name? No, it was hard to say. Did I like Johnbers Blonde's name? No, it's hard to say. But that's their name. I've met lots of people in real life with really awkward names that you just have trouble saying. But you get used to it. Everything has a getting used to it period. And somebody's name, oh gosh. I mean, they can't all be Mark, Rick, or Steve. Do you know what I'm saying? But I think it's very presumptuous of Rue to call the queens out about their choices like that. I think that if the contest was people creating a drag persona from scratch for the first time ever, then critique the names, then suggest better names, then have an opinion of the name. But when a working drag queen walks into a room and says, my name is this, well, then you call them that. Suffer their wrath.